You guys, who are you? I don't have anything for you to take.
We're not here to take, Frank. We're here to give it back.
Give it back? I only gave him $5. Just a little favor.
Homeless man helped a biker without expecting return. Next morning, 200 Hells Angels surrounded him. When homeless Frank Morrison gave his last $5 to help stranded biker Jake Rodriguez fix his Harley, he thought kindness was its own reward until he woke surrounded by 200 Hells Angels demanding to thank their brother's guardian angel. Day 1, 11:47 p.m. Murphy's gas station on Route 66 buzzed with late-night travelers while Frank Morrison, 58, counted his final $5.23 in crumpled bills. 3 months homeless since the factory closed. Tonight's dinner would be gas station sandwich or nothing. The October wind cut through his threadbare jacket as he watched expensive cars fuel up for journeys he'd never afford again. Then he heard the Harley coughing like dying animal in parking lot darkness. Frank had worked 32 years at Detroit manufacturing before automation eliminated his job and Sarah's cancer eliminated their savings. 6 months after her funeral, foreclosure had put him on streets where pride became luxury he couldn't afford. But Sarah's voice still echoed, "Frank, you help people. That's who you are, rich or poor." Jake Rodriguez, 34, sat cursing beside his broken Harley vintage 1978 shovelhead that Iron Brotherhood had gifted him after Afghanistan deployment. Army mechanic turned biker, whose Brotherhood had saved him from PTSD darker than enemy fire. Tonight's breakdown threatened missing tomorrow's memorial ride honoring fallen brothers. Chapter tradition demanded attendance. Missing meant abandoning family who'd replaced military unit that civilian life had scattered. His phone showed 17 missed calls from Steele Morrison chapter president, whose leadership had kept Jake alive through civilian transition that military discharge had made difficult. Frank approached cautiously. Bikers could be dangerous, but broken machinery was universal language he'd spoken during 32 years fixing equipment that fed American families. Some angels wear leather jackets, others carry toolboxes, but the best ones appear when darkness meets desperation and strangers choose kindness over self-preservation. Jake's Harley had thrown primary chain $200 repair that midnight couldn't solve, while Frank's mechanical knowledge could diagnose problems his empty wallet couldn't fix for stranger whose gratitude might never come. 11:52 p.m. Moment of choice. Need help with your bike, son? Jake looked up from primary chain disaster. Chain's busted. Need parts store that ain't gonna be open till morning. Supposed to be at Memorial Ride tomorrow, honoring brothers who didn't make it home. Frank studied the Harley with mechanic's eye that 32 years had developed. Primary chain replacement. Got tools in my pack. Missing proper chain breaker, but gas station might have substitute that improvisation could make work. Jake's surprise was visible. Homeless man possessing mechanical knowledge contradicted every stereotype. "Mister, I appreciate offer, but primary chain replacement costs money I don't have tonight." Frank processed Jake's situation while understanding military brotherhood through Sarah's brother who'd served Vietnam. "Son, I got $5. Not much, but might buy emergency supplies that creativity could make work until proper fix tomorrow." Jake stared at homeless man offering last money for stranger's motorcycle repair. "Sir, can't take your last $5. That's probably your meal money." "Already ate today," Frank lied while stomach cramped from hunger. Moment of truth. Frank's $5. 23 versus stranger's need decision that would change both their lives. 11:55 p.m. Sacrifice made Frank headed toward gas station while Jake followed, understanding that homeless veteran was risking personal welfare for strangers' gratitude. "Mister, what's your name?" "Frank Morrison. Worked 32 years fixing machines before machines started fixing themselves. Wife Sarah always said helping people was only job that mattered." Frank's 5.23 purchased emergency repair supplies while mechanical improvisation created temporary primary chain fix. That factory experience had enabled through creativity. "This'll get you home tonight and to Memorial Ride tomorrow. Real repair needed soon, but Harley should run reliable enough for brotherhood obligations." Jake watched homeless man complete motorcycle repair with competence that decades had developed. "Frank, how can I repay this?" Frank gathered tools while processing gratitude that generosity had earned. "Son, kindness doesn't require repayment. Just remember, homeless veterans need help sometimes." Jake started Harley, while Frank's repair held perfectly. "Frank, you saved my memorial attendance. Brotherhood will want to thank you properly." But Frank was already walking away while Jake's GPS tracker had logged location and Steele Morrison received automatic alert about civilian assistance. Day 2, 6:23 a.m. Brotherhood arrives. Frank woke beneath highway overpass while October cold had penetrated cardboard shelter. Distinctive sound approached. Multiple Harley engines in perfect formation. 20 Iron Brotherhood members appeared, with Steele leading convoy toward homeless man whose kindness had inspired chapter response. Frank Morrison, Army or Marines? Army mechanic, Vietnam, 1969 to 1971. Worked civilian factory 32 years until automation eliminated everything. Steele's recognition was immediate. Brother veteran, whose civilian transition had failed through economic forces rather than character weakness. Jake had spent overnight hours explaining Frank's sacrifice, while chapter protocols demanded proper appreciation for civilian who'd enabled memorial attendance through personal cost. Brothers, Frank Morrison spent his last $5 fixing my primary chain so I could honor fallen heroes. Homeless veteran deserves our respect. Steele studied Frank's situation while understanding that mechanical competence represented resources Brotherhood could utilize while serving vulnerable veteran requiring community assistance. "Frank, Jake says you got skills. We got broken bikes, and you got empty stomach. Maybe we help each other out." Cliffhanger. Steele's phone was buzzing with calls from regional chapters who'd heard Jake's story. 6:45 a.m. Word spreads. Steele's phone exploded with calls from Iron Brotherhood chapters throughout region. Jake's social media post had gone viral overnight. "Homeless vet spent his last $5 fixing my Harley so I could honor fallen brothers." 20 chapters want to meet Frank Morrison. Word spreading about Midnight Angel, who helped member reach Memorial Ride. Steele announced, while regional Brotherhood response was building. Frank processed overwhelming attention while homeless isolation hadn't prepared him for military community recognition that individual kindness had inspired. "I just helped Jake get to Memorial. Didn't expect all this attention for doing what Sarah would have wanted me to do." But Jake's story had resonated throughout veteran networks whose members recognized genuine character when bureaucratic systems had failed brother requiring assistance. "Frank, you represent military values that Brotherhood exists to protect. Homeless veteran deserves support that system should provide but doesn't," Steele explained while coordinating response. Frank's mechanical expertise was being evaluated through employment opportunities that brotherhood connections could provide without charity that pride had difficulty accepting. 3 job offers already, motorcycle repair shops that value competence over circumstances. Brotherhood businesses understand military character. 7:30 a.m. Gathering momentum. Regional chapters were converging while Frank's location had become gathering point for demonstration of brotherhood values that military service had inspired through mutual aid. Frank watched organization develop while understanding that midnight kindness had triggered response exceeding his comprehension about community, whose stereotype didn't match reality. Steele, this is overwhelming. I appreciate help, but don't need charity. Got pride left. Frank, this ain't charity. This is brotherhood. You served country, then served community through factory work, now serve Jake when he needed help. That's who we support. Jake approached with coffee and breakfast sandwich. Frank, you saved my memorial attendance. Today I honor brothers who died overseas. Tonight, we honor brother who's still fighting here at home. The distinction mattered to Frank while understanding that military recognition required different response than civilian pity. Housing was being discussed while apartment possibilities emerged through brotherhood connections that legitimate employment could sustain rather than temporary assistance. Frank Morrison Motorcycle Services could specialize in vintage repairs. Brotherhood clientele provides steady customers who value competence, Steele proposed, while sustainable solution was developing. 8:15 a.m. 200 arrivals. Harleys materialized around highway overpass, while Frank's homeless shelter had become center of veteran advocacy demonstration that individual kindness had inspired. 200 Iron Brotherhood members formed respectful circle, while Frank processed overwhelming tribute to midnight sacrifice that Sarah would have understood better than him. Steele approached with formal recognition. Frank Morrison, Army mechanic, Vietnam veteran, whose factory layoff had created homelessness that Brotherhood won't tolerate from member family. Chapter formation surrounded Frank while 200 bikers demonstrated respect that military service had earned through sacrifice. Brothers, Frank Morrison represents values we swore to protect. Today, we protect brother who protected community member when mechanical failure threatened memorial obligations. Frank straightened while military bearing emerged despite circumstances. Brothers, I appreciate recognition, but just did what decent people do for each other. Frank, that's exactly why you deserve support. Character that serves others without expectation deserves community that serves back. Steele replied while Jake nodded agreement. Media arrived as local news coverage captured Iron Brotherhood tribute to homeless veteran whose generosity had inspired massive organizational response requiring journalistic attention. 8:45 a.m. Frank's overwhelm. Frank faced emotional crisis while overnight transformation from invisible homeless person to celebrated veteran had exceeded his capacity to process attention that pride had never anticipated. This is too much. I appreciate Brotherhood support, but I'm not hero. Just help Jake reach memorial ride. That's what neighbors do. Jake recognized Frank's distress while understanding that homeless isolation had created difficulty accepting community assistance that genuine need required despite pride. Frank, you saved my memorial attendance. Without your help, I would have failed brothers whose sacrifice deserves recognition. That makes you family. Steele coordinated private conversation while 200 members maintained respectful distance, allowing Frank space to process overwhelming attention. Frank, brotherhood support isn't charity. We take care of family. You're family now, whether you accept it or not. Frank's internal struggle was visible. Accepting help versus maintaining independence that circumstances had made impossible through homelessness. Sarah always said pride comes before fall. Maybe I already fell and too stubborn to accept ladder back up. Jake's response was immediate. Frank, ladder's not handout. It's hand up from brothers who understand what service costs when civilian world doesn't appreciate sacrifice. Emotional moment bar one. Frank breaking down, realizing he doesn't have to face everything alone anymore. Day 3, Sunday morning. Frank's story had attracted regional media attention, while local news coverage of Iron Brotherhood tribute had inspired community response that individual kindness had generated through viral documentation. Homeless veterans' $5 sacrifice inspires 200 bikers. Headlines declared, while Frank's midnight repair had become symbol of military values that civilian society should emulate. But Frank was struggling with sudden attention, while decades of invisibility hadn't prepared him for public recognition that privacy had never anticipated. Jake, I can't handle all this attention. People taking pictures, reporters asking questions, just wanted to help you reach Memorial Ride. Jake recognized Frank's distress, while understanding that homeless trauma had created difficulty managing social interaction that isolation had complicated through survival necessity. Frank, you're family now. Family protects each other from unwanted attention while ensuring needed support gets through. Steele implemented security protocols while Brotherhood members formed protective barrier, ensuring Frank's privacy during emotional transition from homelessness to community acceptance. But deeper issue was emerging. Frank's guilt about Sarah's death and his subsequent homelessness had created belief that he didn't deserve Brotherhood support being offered. Sarah died because I couldn't afford better medical care, lost house because I chose her treatment over mortgage payments. Maybe I deserve being homeless. Jake's response revealed own survivor guilt from military service. Frank, I survived Afghanistan while good men died. Doesn't mean I don't deserve Brotherhood support when civilian life gets overwhelming. Sunday, 2 p.m. Breakthrough moment. Frank faced choice between accepting Brotherhood assistance and returning to homeless isolation that grief had created through self-punishment for circumstances beyond individual control. Jake shared his own story. Frank, I came home from deployment feeling guilty that I survived when brothers didn't. Brotherhood taught me that survivor's guilt honors nobody. Living well honors fallen friends. Steele added perspective. Frank, Sarah's memory lives through kindness. You showed Jake. Rejecting Brotherhood support dishonors sacrifice she made supporting your character development. Frank processed different interpretation. Accepting help honored Sarah's memory, rather than betraying it through pride that served nobody. Sarah always said helping people was who I am. Maybe receiving help is who I need to become. The admission created breakthrough, while Frank's willingness to accept assistance demonstrated character growth that tragedy had initially prevented through guilt. Jake's memorial ride had been completed, while fallen heroes were honored through Frank's sacrifice that had enabled proper recognition of military service requiring community support. Frank, Brothers I honored today would approve of midnight kindness you showed. Military service continues through civilian actions that serve others. Brotherhood housing assistance was being finalized while apartment arrangement provided stability that employment opportunity would sustain through mechanical expertise that factory experience had developed. Frank Morrison Motorcycle Services starts Monday. Brotherhood clientele provides steady customers, while Vintage Repair Specialty utilizes industrial knowledge. Monday, day 4. Frank's first day at temporary apartment had been overwhelming, while transition from cardboard shelter to bedroom with bathroom required emotional adjustment that homelessness had made difficult. Jake, apartments bigger than house I shared with Sarah first year we were married. Don't know how to process having roof that belongs to me again. Jake understood transition difficulty while his own civilian adjustment had required brotherhood support that isolation couldn't provide during PTSD management. Frank, accepting help doesn't make you weak, makes you human. Sarah would want you housed and fed, not suffering on streets. Employment preparation was being coordinated while Motorcycle Repair Shop had agreed to trial period, allowing Frank's competence to demonstrate value beyond circumstances that homelessness had created. Motor City Classics specializes in vintage Harleys. Brotherhood clientele appreciates mechanical expertise over appearance. Perfect match for your skills. Frank's mechanical knowledge was being updated while modern motorcycle technology required learning that 32 years of industrial experience provided foundation for understanding. Tuesday, day 5. Frank's first day of employment exceeded expectations while mechanical competence immediately impressed customers whose vintage Harleys required expertise that factory experience had developed. Jake visited during a lunch break, while friendship was developing beyond initial midnight encounter that had created brotherhood connection. Frank, you saved my memorial attendance. Now I'm watching you rebuild life that tragedy had disrupted. That's brotherhood working both directions. Frank's transformation from homeless desperation to employed stability had demonstrated community support potential when character met opportunity through sustained assistance rather than temporary charity. 1 month later, Frank had established successful routine while motorcycle repair expertise had provided steady income that apartment rent and dignity could sustain through competence rather than charity. Jake, working on Harleys reminds me of factory days when fixing machines meant keeping families fed. Different context, same satisfaction. Jake's regular visits had developed into genuine friendship, while shared military experience had created understanding that civilian relationships often couldn't match. Steele's coordination had ensured Frank's successful integration while brotherhood support had addressed homeless veterans' needs without overwhelming pride that independence required. Frank Morrison represents military values in action. Character that serves others deserves community that serves back through sustainable assistance. Frank's apartment overlooked Memorial Park, where Sarah's memory was honored through small garden that employment had enabled him to maintain properly. Sarah would be proud seeing me housed and working again. Midnight kindness toward Jake brought me back to living instead of just surviving. Regional Iron Brotherhood had established protocol for assisting homeless veterans, while Frank's case had demonstrated successful integration requiring individual attention rather than institutional processing. 6 months later, Frank's motorcycle repair expertise had attracted regional clientele, while vintage Harley restoration had become specialty. That factory experience had enabled, through mechanical understanding, transcending motorcycle-specific knowledge. Jake's friendship had provided emotional support, while shared understanding about military service had created bond that civilian relationships often couldn't match through common experience. Frank, your midnight kindness saved my memorial attendance. Watching your recovery has taught me about brotherhood extending beyond organizational membership. Steele's chapter had established Frank Morrison protocol for assisting homeless veterans, while systematic approach had replaced crisis response with sustained support. Frank's business success had enabled modest prosperity, while apartment stability and steady income had restored dignity that homelessness had temporarily obscured through circumstances. Sometimes losing everything teaches you what really matters: people helping people regardless of conditions that poverty creates. Iron Brotherhood annual gathering included Frank as honored guest, while Midnight Sacrifice had become chapter legend that newcomers learned about service values. Frank's testimony about Sarah's memory had inspired other widowed veterans, while grief processing had been supported through community understanding that isolation couldn't provide. Frank occasionally struggled with survivor guilt, while success after Sarah's death created emotional complexity that grieving process had made difficult to navigate. Jake, sometimes I feel guilty about having good life when Sarah didn't live to see recovery, like I'm betraying her memory by being happy again. Jake's response reflected own experience with survivor guilt. Frank, Sarah's love-enabled character that helped me reach Memorial Ride. Living well honors her investment in your development. Brotherhood counseling had addressed veteran grief, while peer support had provided understanding that professional therapy couldn't match through shared experience. Frank's business growth had required expansion, while success had created employment opportunity for other homeless veterans whose circumstances had been addressed through systematic assistance. Motor City Classics now employs 3 homeless veterans. Frank's example demonstrates potential when character meets opportunity through community support. Anniversary of Midnight Encounter had become Iron Brotherhood tradition, while Frank's sacrifice was honored through annual Memorial Ride that Jake continued leading. Friendship between Frank and Jake had deepened, while mutual support had demonstrated brotherhood transcending organizational boundaries through genuine human connection. 1 year later, Frank's business had served 500-plus Iron Brotherhood members, while vintage Harley expertise had become regional standard that military community valued through authentic craftsmanship. Jake's continuing friendship had provided stability, while emotional support had enabled Frank's complete civilian integration through understanding that military experience had created. Sarah's memory was honored through memorial scholarship that Frank's success had funded, while prosperity had enabled remembrance that poverty had prevented. Sarah always said helping people was the only job that mattered. Motorcycle repair serves community, while memorial scholarship serves Sarah's values. Iron Brotherhood had established permanent homeless veteran assistance program, while Frank's case had demonstrated successful integration requiring sustained support rather than crisis intervention. Frank's apartment had become gathering place for Jake's visits, while friendship had replaced loneliness that homelessness had created through social isolation. Regional recognition had honored Frank's midnight sacrifice, while humble character had impressed community leaders whose support had enabled business expansion. Frank Morrison Motorcycle Services had become symbol of veteran resilience, while Success Story had inspired other homeless military families requiring assistance. 2 years later, Frank's prosperity had enabled modest house purchase, while stability had restored dignity that Sarah would have recognized despite changed circumstances that tragedy had created. Jake's family inclusion of Frank had provided holiday gatherings, while loneliness had been replaced by brotherhood, extending beyond organizational membership through genuine friendship. Frank, your family. Sarah's memory lives through kindness. You continue showing others who need assistance. Memorial Scholarship recipients had included homeless veterans whose education had been supported through Frank's business success that midnight kindness had inspired. Iron Brotherhood annual memorial ride included Frank as permanent honor guard, while his sacrifice had become chapter tradition that newcomers learned about service values. Some kindness costs everything you have, but returns everything you need when brotherhood recognizes sacrifice that military values require. Frank's complete recovery from homelessness had demonstrated community support potential when character met sustained assistance rather than temporary charity that crisis had demanded. Sarah's memorial garden had expanded, while Frank's prosperity had enabled proper remembrance that poverty had prevented during homeless period. Frank Morrison Motorcycle Services had served 800+ Iron Brotherhood members, while Jake's friendship had provided emotional support that complete civilian integration had required through sustained community connection. Steele's chapter had established permanent homeless veteran assistance program, while Frank's successful case had demonstrated effectiveness of sustained support rather than temporary charity. Regional Iron Brotherhood had adopted Frank Morrison protocol serving 50+ homeless veterans, while systematic approach had replaced crisis intervention with comprehensive assistance. Frank's business had employed 5 additional homeless veterans, while demonstration of successful integration had inspired community confidence in veteran employment programs. Sarah's Memorial Scholarship had served 12 military families, while Frank's prosperity had enabled remembrance that poverty had prevented during homeless isolation. Jake's continuing friendship had replaced loneliness, while shared military experience had created understanding that civilian relationships often couldn't match through common service background. Motor City Classics had become regional destination, while Frank's vintage Harley expertise had attracted clientele valuing military competence over civilian credentials alone. 5 years later, Frank Morrison served on Regional Homeless Veteran Advisory Board, while Jake's midnight call for help had inspired systematic community response serving vulnerable military families whose circumstances required sustained assistance rather than crisis intervention. Steele's Iron Brotherhood operated homeless veteran programs in 8 states, while Frank's successful integration had demonstrated potential when character met sustained community support, transcending organizational boundaries. Jake's family had permanently included Frank, while friendship had replaced isolation that homelessness had created through circumstances beyond individual control. Sarah's Memorial Scholarship had served 75+ military families, while Frank's prosperity had honored her memory through service that values had inspired rather than circumstances had prevented. They learned that some kindness costs everything you have, others cost nothing at all. But the most important kindness is offered when brotherhood recognizes character requiring assistance, creating sustained support that transforms individual crisis into community success story honoring military values through civilian application that serves others whose circumstances require understanding rather than judgment about situations that anyone might face when tragedy meets inadequate social support systems. Some kindness costs everything you have, others cost nothing at all. But the most important kindness is offered when brotherhood recognizes character requiring assistance, creating sustained support that honors military values through civilian service.